All right, so we got chapter 13 here. Chapter takeaways. It's for Dr. Doyle. Um, Getting towards the end of this book here. Um, so, chapter 13, we dive in leadership in crisis. There can't be a crisis next week. My schedule is already full. That's a quote from Henry Kissinger. And I think that this kind of just kicks us off with the chapter and, kind of breaks it down how we want to lead in situations where it's hard, and many times when things are hard, that's when your true leaders come out, because anybody can lead when things are easy, and anybody can lead when things are going your way and your company's winning, or your team's winning. It's easy to be a leader then. um, but when things are stacked against you, or things are not going in your favor, it's much harder. It's much harder to be a leader. And so that, they touch on that a bit, and then they kind of get into the anatomy of a crisis, which they talk about crisis types, which were public perception, natural disasters, product or service, terrorist attacks, things like that. Kind of give us types of crisis, and kind of so they break it down into almost categories where we can kind of break it down, if that makes sense. And then we go into crisis stages, which is it says here in the text is while crises differ, they all appear to follow a similar pattern of development. Each passes through the same three stages: pre-crisis, crisis event, and post-crisis. I mean, pretty basic stuff, kind of, relatively easy to understand knowledge, but, when you break it down and look at it in perspectives, it makes a lot of sense. So then we kind of dove into crisis leadership, and just kind of breaking that down further, and looking at how certain people lead certain ways in these certain crisis situations. Um, you know, in a crisis situation, many times people want to freak out, and that's when your leaders, kind of show their face and, not act out. I don't want to say act out; it's a bad word, but they rise to the surface. The cream becomes a cream of the crop, and they rise to the top. During a crisis situation. So we also talked about trigger events and kind of things that self-explanatory, but it triggers an event which creates a crisis. The crisis ends when the crisis is resolved. Basic information too, but when you look at that there's a process behind leading during crisis, and those things are important to say. So it talked into the three stages of model crisis, you know, and kind of broke it down into framework and laid it out for us pretty directly. Um, and then, the last part was the post crisis, which I actually thought was very unique, because many times people, want to figure out how the crisis was resolved, but we don't talk about what comes after the crisis. That's kind of background knowledge, and so that was unique to hear and read. So those are my chapter 13 takeaways. We are almost there, Doyle, and I hope that you come to graduation.